could you lower your hand? Is the West not in decline? Okay, for those of us who aren't in the room, I would say it was about, what, 10% don't think it's in decline?
I'm used to being in a minority of one.
If you could control things, would you want every other nation to become as wealthy as the West? Would you want them to become as democratic as the West? Yanis?
Oh, me?
Why not?
Well, allow me to answer by means of an example, which touches upon something Konstantin said. That, you know, the riffraff out there, outside the West, are dying to come to our shores, and therefore it means that we're civilized and we're better. Well, take the Democratic Republic of Congo. The King of Belgium created a slave colony there for 30 years, then it was taken over by the state of Belgium for 40 years. Then, as they were gaining independence, the CIA murdered their first president. And now today, Glencore, one of our great corporations, is mining all sorts of cobalt derivatives and so on, giving zero to the people of the Republic of Congo. I'd like to live in a West which is not a parasite on people that it then denigrates by saying that you are the riffraff and you want to come to a beautiful garden and this is why, you know, and therefore our dream is to stop you from coming, which is your dream.
Okay, no, but in a way... But is the ultimate aim, I mean, if you could do it, that yes, you don't have whatever the mining companies doing whatever they do in other nations, but those nations build up. I'm just wondering if the dream is a multipolar world.
Well,
yes.
Very briefly, the dream is to have cooperation, solidarity, and genuine development of everyone that lives on.
We are sorry to interrupt you, but before we move on to the next point, we noticed that a lot of you are returning viewers who have not subscribed. If you've enjoyed our content, subscribing would mean the world to us. It's a small click for you, but it makes a huge difference for us. Thank you for your support.
This planet.
The multipolar world is an atrocious idea whose consequences will be exactly the consequences we have when you see a multipolar world within one country. That country is Mexico. Mexico is controlled by a large number of cartels. And when one of them is taken out, what ensues is a chaotic fight for dominance again. And the multipolar world will lead to conflagration, inevitably, because somebody has to be on top. It's unavoidable. And
somebody has to be on top.
Of course. You know, Yanis's point about cooperation is entirely wonderful, but the best way to predict human behavior is to look at human behavior in the past. When is this great age in which everyone just sat together?
Argument to bring back slavery, because almost every society until 200 years ago had slavery.
May I address what Yanis has said repeatedly, actually? I think it's important to do so. What he said on stage during his presentation is entirely true, which is that many of the riches of Western societies are the product of the resources that were taken from other parts of the world. What I'm afraid this analysis is missing is the fact that during that time, as during the present time, the entire world was competing on that very same model. The only reason that the European powers were able to be as effective as they were is that they had superior technology. And superior technology.
Far more superior technology, and they were not imperialists.
May I
Yanis,
finish?
1 second.
Okay.
I will come to you to respond. But let's let Constantine make the point.
Let's be factually correct.
We've got an hour and 40. Well, we're good.
I think
it was only Europe that set out to destroy
Yanis. Right, we've only just started. Constantine.
It's too. I'm also slightly Greek, so this is a Greek on Greek violence here.
Get to the point, because otherwise...
Well, I'm afraid I'm going to need a little time to get to the point, especially if I'm interrupted. So, every other civilization in human history has practiced slavery in one form or another. Every other civilization, including the Native Americans, who were enslaving each other and anyone they could find, the Middle Eastern Arab slave trade across the Saharan desert was worse and lasted longer than the transatlantic slave trade. And every other great empire in history attempted to practice slavery to the very best of its ability, to do the very thing that Yanis rightly accuses Western powers of doing. Now, the reason the West was more successful at this is it was more technologically advanced and was able to transport people across oceans in a way that at that time no other civilization could. So yes, it is true that the Western history is one of colonialism and enslavement, but that is only because we were better at it than other people. That's the only reason that we are where we are.
So just to go, I will come to you in a minute, but just to go back to the specific question.
Yes.
Should we be aiming towards a multipolar world? You would say, look, we're a competitive world. Let's just compete against everyone else.
I would say that the best world is a stable one, and the construction we have had for some time now has been one of the best periods in human history since the end of World War II. Now, why has that been?
For the West?
Well, I would argue for the billions of people around the world who've been lifted out of poverty during the same time, in addition to for the West. Now, is that maintainable? Well, that's, I think, the issue that we're in discussions about. I don't know if that's maintainable, but my argument, the argument I made, and the reason that we're having this debate about slavery, is that I consider Western values, I don't think we should bomb them into the people of Iraq and Afghanistan, as some of our leaders have been attempting to do, but they are the best values, at least for those of us who want to live in the West, and we should maintain them as much as we possibly can, and then other people may wish to buy into that worldview as well. No one suggests that the United States or the values of Western Europe are perfect. I would not suggest that even to this day all people in America are treated equally, whether that's on sex or race or whatever line. But which country has made more progress? We talk endlessly in the West about racism. Okay, what other great civilizations in the world are better at race relations than we are? Is it Russia? When I was last in Russia, there was a song playing on the metro which was, "They killed a Negro, la 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 la, he can't play basketball anymore." In China, one of the most popular commercials on TV was a Chinese girl who was approached by a black man. She pulls him off and shoves him into a washing machine. She puts the product that is being advertised into the washing machine, and what's the payoff? He comes out Chinese. Where is this great world to which we are comparing ourselves to? You cannot compare our civilization to utopia. You have to compare it to reality. And in reality, we are the best civilization in existence today, and that is why we must maintain our dominance around the world.
And no one seems to be arguing with that. Are we good enough?
I don't agree with that at all.
Okay.
Lots of people are arguing
We'll
with
come
that.
back to that. But are we good enough? I just want to...
We're never going to be good enough. Are you good enough? Are you good? Am I good enough as a human being? Have I worked out the right way to treat my wife or my son so that I could say, I no longer need to improve? I am this perfect person.
Okay.
Is there any human being in the world who's not a psychopath who can make that claim? No. So why should we expect our civilization to be perfect? We should only expect it to be as perfect as it can possibly be and better than others. That's all that there is. Only comparison and nothing else. And if you're comparing us to the land of milk and honey, you are dangerous.
Okay, but I would agree there's a third thing. It's not just accepting that we're not perfect and that we're better than others, but actually actively working to improve the internal, which I'm not hearing you advocate for.
Well, you haven't asked me about it. I'm very happy to advocate it. We had this discussion very briefly. We had this discussion over dinner last night about diversity and inclusion and all of these programs which are intended to bring people into the thing. And I say to all of that, the right objective, difficult as it is to achieve in any society, is that there should be zero discrimination against people. And what we have today in the modern West is a new framework of discrimination. We have decided that it is okay to discriminate against white people. It's okay to discriminate. Oh, you laugh. Well, let me give you some statistics. Fantastic, I enjoy that.
Well, before you give us some statistics.
No, let me give some statistics.
You can come back
if you are Jewish or Asian or white, it is much harder for you to get into an American university because all of those groups are widely discriminated against in that society.
That's simply untrue.
That is factually correct.
That is simply untrue.
For the same SAT score, you are much less likely to get in. The BBC has whole realms of jobs that are not available to white people. There are internships that prohibit white people from applying. Now, I don't regard myself as white. I'm a first-generation Russian, Ukrainian, Greek, Jewish immigrant. I hate this stuff, and I hate it because it unfairly privileges people who do not deserve the privilege. What we should be doing is eliminating discrimination, not introducing new types of discrimination.
I'd like to make a couple of points. One concerns this. Look, as an educator, many a time, in a class, there would be young people who, because of their disadvantaged background, needed more of my attention. Okay? Because of their disadvantaged background, they didn't have the same tools that other kids did. Now, I gave them more attention, which meant, because it's a zero-sum game, there are a fixed number of hours every day, that attention, extra attention, I didn't give to other kids that were advantaged or coming from the advantage. To call this discrimination, because I didn't make my time available equally to everyone, is to miss out on the fact that in order to bring about meritocracy, in order to bring out the talents of the disadvantaged kids, and of course, disadvantage is highly correlated with gender, with races, with race, with ethnic background. To call this discriminatory in the pursuit of meritocracy is essentially to fly in the face of the facts. The second point I wanted to make...
very briefly, I did not.
Okay, you can come.
I did not call that discrimination. I was talking about admission.
No, when I was talking about in universities that we are going to take people from a working class, and therefore...
I was talking about admissions.
Okay,
admissions.
But I needed to make the second point, because I think it's a question... It touches upon... It speaks to perhaps the deepest difference between Konstantin and I. We have one commonality. We both grew up in a dictatorship. But a very different kind of dictatorship. He grew up in the Soviet Union. I grew up in the Greek fascist dictatorship under NATO. And I'm saying this because you have a tendency to think in terms of us, the West, versus them. And them being the East, being the uncivilized Chinese, or the homicidal Russians, or the Africans, or who are trying to, to come to our shores. Because of my background, I have a very different tendency. You see, we were in Greece, when I was growing up, part of the West. We were part of the Council of Europe. We were part of NATO. And yet, the secret police broke down our door and abducted my father, and we lived in terror of a fascist dictatorship. So I know how to not see the world in us versus them. I can see, interestingly, my father, the same father, when the dictatorship fell, instructed me in no uncertain terms that I should study in Britain so that I wouldn't have to face the secret police. So I can relate to the importance and cherish the importance of Western values, while at the same time recognizing the dialectical relationship. It is the terror that the West has unleashed on so many other societies that has created existentialist threats for the United States, for us. So let us, just for a moment, consider the possibility that this us versus them, the West versus the rest, is the root problem which essentially condemns the West to the decline of the values, which may end up with a bang, not a whimper. The prospect of humanity depends on not going down Konstantin's way of maintaining a unipolar world. A unipolar world is toxic. It is quick marching us to extinction for two reasons. One I mentioned already, but I'll mention it once more because we didn't discuss it sufficiently. I kept bringing it back, but it was disappearing. One is, of course, climate emergency, the climate disaster. Without a genuinely multipolar, democratic humanity, where the Indians are represented, the Chinese are represented, the Africans are represented, the Europeans are represented, there is no way we're going to survive on this planet. Donald Trump, Konstantin was arguing in favor of a unipolar West. Well, there's no such thing as Britain, even if they have a place in the Security Council. It is the United States. And you have a president who doesn't believe in climate change. He thinks it's hocus pocus. So it is clear to me, I don't need to elaborate the point, that humanity's future depends on a multipolar world in which there is more proportionality between numbers, prospects, and power. The second point, Constantine, and I'm referring to you because this has been the tussle tonight, and I've very much enjoyed it, and thank you so much for providing me with incredible joy.
He's speaking after you, and you're not interrupting.
I remember in 2001 demonstrating outside Russia's embassy in London against Putin. And I remember a month later, I was in the Senate of the University of Athens, and I was the only one, again, I was in the minority of one. The proposal that had come to the Senate was the proposal to award a certain Vladimir Putin an honorary doctorate, and I was the only one who voted against, and I explained my negative vote by saying that he's a war criminal because of what he did, effectively killed 250,000 people in Chechnya just in order to solidify his regime. And what was the reaction of the British police outside the Russian embassy and of the West? They treated us, who were opposing Putin, as the enemies of the people, as the enemies of the West. That is the West for you. In a sense, Putin would not have existed if it wasn't for the massive diminution of the life prospects of Russians for which the United States was chiefly responsible through the IMF in 1993, 1994. There was a government back then, corrupt, incompetent and so on, but they just wanted to become part of the West in Russia. And, the crushing of the prospects of the Russian people was the result of the West. This is why I'm saying, stop thinking in terms of the good West, the bad East. We are the ones, because we have such exorbitant power, that we are creating malignancies in Russia, in China, in Syria, in Israel, through our nasty and rather short-sighted policies.
What do you guys think? Do you guys think a multipolar world is even possible? Please leave your comment below. We would love to hear from you.
Thank you for making it this far. If you like this video, you might want to share it with a like-minded friend. Thank you, and as always, stay blessed.